Thank you very much indeed, Tom. I'm going to pass over now to Andy Slaughter. Excuse me. Andy, I think you better introduce yourself as our Legal Aid Minister while I get my voice back.
Is that working? Yes. My name is Andy Slaughter. I'm the MP in Hammersmith and also the Shadow Justice Minister who has responsibility in the Commons for Legal Aid. Lord Clark, who is allowing me to speak for both of us on this occasion, and he was the Legal Aid Minister, of course, previously under Jacques Straw's regime, and is now the lead on legal aid in the Lords. I deal with it in the Commons. The reason where all of us explained, coming at it from our individual angles but trying to join up today, is because it became painfully clear to us at an early stage that just looking at legal aid cuts or local authority cuts or what have you was not getting the full picture. And but we were getting that in our constituencies. And I spoke at the all-party group breakfast last week, and I explained what happened in my own constituency, which is very mature in terms of its advice services, as well as having a lot of specialist advice services. It had 4 main advice centres, which had been there for 30 years, which had very substantial funding, of at least £1.5 million between the 4 of them. But even before we've had to come to the cuts in legal aid, which is what I'm going to briefly address, 2 of them have closed simply because of the removal of local authority funding. The Hammersmith and Fulham Law Centre, which I've been on the management committee of for 20 years, and I, to declare an interest, was a practicing lawyer and did a substantial amount of legal aid work in my practice until I came here. But so I'm very familiar with that. But Hammersmith Law Centre has also lost all its local government funding, and if, as is predicted if what is in the consultation paper comes true, it could lose up to 90% of its LSC funding, which is the other substantial chunk of money. I mean, some advice centres are lucky enough, and I know through Advice UK there are a number of funding streams, but many, like the one I'm on the board of, it was local authority and LSC funding that was the majority of funding that it had, and it would be very difficult for that or most of the other law centres in the country to keep going if the proposals in the Green Paper become true. And that would leave in Hammersmith 1 remaining advice centre, which is the CAB, which hasn't had all its funding cut as yet, but has had about a 10-15% cut in funding, even with the 5th restored, and yet will be asked to operate across the whole borough, an area of severe deprivation, and cover for the other 3 centres that are closed. And that simply is not sustainable, even allowing for the fact that, as I say, many other specialist advice centres, Horn of Africa, many other centres which specifically give advice to minority groups within the borough have also all closed because of their cuts in funding. But just to say, that's what I'm supposed to be talking about, in terms of where we are with the legal aid, it is sad. I mean, I hope we'll shut up in a minute and hear from you about what you're actually experiencing already in terms of cuts, rather than me conjecture what those cuts are going to be, because it's quite difficult to get that information centrally. But there was an understanding, as on so many issues, between the parties of the importance of advice, I thought. And it's absolutely right. The reason I'm glad that Tom is here is that in the debates we've had, the Westminster Hall debate, the backbench debate that Yvonne sponsored, there were strong and unequivocal representations in favour of the advice centre from Conservative and Liberal Democrat MPs as there were from Labour MPs. It's easier, in a way, for us to do it from the position of opposition. In some ways it's more difficult. So I do think that those MPs on the government side who've spoken out do deserve credit. The whole history of legal aid in this country has been a bipartisan one. It was the Labour government that introduced it, but it was with support of substantial parts of the Conservative Party. And that understanding that you need to have not what is being proposed in the Green Paper, which I think is largely cosmetic. It's to cover the government against criticisms that people in extremis, people who are suffering domestic violence, people who are about to lose their home, asylum seekers will continue to get legal aid. I don't believe that will be the case, because I don't see how you can run the type of advice centres that we have if you cut 80 or 90% of their funding and say, well, you can carry on doing this in extremis funding. I don't believe that will happen. But even if you did do that, I don't think that is an economic or a sensible way to go about, to wait until people are about to lose their home before you provide them with the advice or the support or the representation to do that. It is as sort of economically illiterate as it is immoral. I hope that I'm not sure that language is what gets through to government, but I'll try and moderate it slightly. I hope that message is getting through. I mean, there are some signs that it is. There are some signs that in relation to what are the more, I use this in the best sense of the word, populist brands like CAB, that the government is beginning to listen. It did do the U-turn on Fifth. I think it's more difficult to sell lawyers to the public. God knows why, because when people need lawyers, they're very fond of them. But it's not a brand that appeals always, and therefore part of the job that I think we all have to do in supporting legal aid is to say that it is much more than simply providing money for lawyers and providing money for cases that perhaps, as the government say, shouldn't be in court at all. It is about absolute bedrock and fundamentals of giving people access to justice. It is part of a network, but the legal aid part of it is just as essential as any other part. And I'll end on that.